I'd just like to welcome you all to the 2022 Phoenix Dinner. It's great to see everyone. Everybody's got their seats, and for you, those of you who haven't been here before, this is our first dinner since before the pandemic. We did our best to have a dinner last year, but we had to kind of pull the plug about a month or two before. But so it's our first gathering since 2019. So I see some familiar faces and some new faces. So it's great to have everybody out. And just a reminder to update your email and join our Facebook group. It's called Record Employees Only if you're not a member. Just a bit of background on the dinner. This is the 13th annual dinner. We had the photos up here of past dinners. It would have been the 15th if we could have had the last two, but it really grew out of the old Record 25-year club, which the company stopped doing in 2007, I think. Our first dinner was 2008. So, and I went to I finally got into the 25-year club, and I got to go to one dinner, and then they stopped it. So some of us were kind of ticked off, so we decided, why don't we try organizing our own dinner? And that's how the whole thing got started. Before we move on to the actual food, every year we have a tradition of remembering the people who have passed on or died since the previous dinner. And since we've had, it's been 3 years since our last dinner, we've got quite a list of people who have died, unfortunately. But that's the group who passed on. So keep them in your memory. We have Grace with Julie House is going to say grace. Thank you, Jane.
With glad hearts, we gather here in celebration of our shared histories. Tonight, as we share memories of days gone by and news of where life's journey has taken us, we are mindful of our colleagues who are no longer with us. We give thanks for their lives and pray for the comfort of those who grieve their loss. We give thanks for the food we share this evening and for those who made and are serving it. For this we pray. Amen.
I had a sheet out there you could sign anybody who wanted to get up and share a few memories, and so we had a grand total of one person, me. But before, I did prepare a couple of things, but is there anyone else who'd like to get up first to kick things off, or? Prime the pump. Okay, let me get started, and maybe that'll spark a few thoughts. So, I just wanted to talk about a guy, one of the first people I got to know when I came to the Record way back in 1979, and it wasn't somebody my age, I came as a summer student in 79. So this fellow wasn't another student or a young fellow. In fact, he was quite a bit older than me, not dramatically, but he was in his 50s. And that guy was Henry Cook. Do you all remember Henry Cook? Yeah, Henry was a business columnist at the Record, and at the time he was the business editor of the Record. So he was kind of a big shot at the Record, at least I thought. He wrote a weekly column, sometimes 2 columns a week, and he was really well known in the community. I would come to learn, but at any rate, I was just a lowly summer student. So I was living in an apartment downtown that I'd found. I came from Western, where I went to university, and anyway, so I'd been at the Record a few weeks, and it was Saturday, and I decided I'm going to go out for breakfast. So I wandered over to King Street, a short distance away, and walked into this restaurant. It was called the Hersel House. I don't know why I remember that. It was owned by the Bingamans. And I walk in, and there weren't that many people there. It was probably 11 in the morning. And then I see Henry Cook sitting there by himself with a big plate of bacon and eggs and newspapers all spread out. And so I recognized him. I thought, oh, there's Henry Cook. And I kind of was thinking, well, I'll just sneak over here. Maybe he won't notice me, and I'll just sit over here. I wasn't going to go over and say hello. I didn't think he'd even know me. So then I kind of snuck in stealthily and started edging my way over to one side, and then I hear this booming voice, "You work at the Record, don't you?" "Yeah, come on over here." So over I went, and there's Henry, and he said, "What's your name?" And so I introduced myself. "Sit down, let's have breakfast." So anyway, I sat down, I had breakfast with Henry. And any of you who knew Henry, he was kind of a larger than life, really outgoing guy with quite a loud voice. And anyway, so that was my introduction to Henry. And Henry, from then on, we sort of became friends. It's not like we went out and drinking together a lot, but anyway, I felt like I got to know him. He made me feel relaxed, and so just a few memories about Henry. People who didn't know him, Henry was a big guy. He was about 6'3", even 6'4", and he was the business editor. He was kind of a bit on the heavy side. He had a bit of a paunch by this point. He was in his early 50s. You might see his picture up there. But anyway, Henry dressed like a business guy. He always wore a shirt and tie and a jacket, but he somehow almost always managed to look disheveled at the same time. Like his tie was always kind of undone, his jacket was off, and he'd have all these shirts with a monogrammed H on them, white shirts with the H for Henry. And he used to walk around the newsroom in his stocking feet, which I thought was kind of odd. But I guess his shoes were too small. And anyway, yeah.
Your 5 minutes is way up.
So nobody else is coming up. I'm just going to keep going. Yeah, let me finish. Sit down. I'm just getting warmed up here. Anyway, so Henry, he'd sit in the back corner of the newsroom and he'd pound out his column, and a lot of the people he interviewed would come into the newsroom. Ann McNeely will remember this. You do, don't you, Ann? No? Okay. So Henry would interview these people, and you could hear him, and he'd pound away on his typewriter and do his interviews. So anyway, what was good about his columns, and they were really popular, was he had a really good human touch. He somehow conveyed what the person was like. He wrote a lot about different businesses and entrepreneurs, and he'd do stuff like throw in, he put it in context, like the business was started in 1960, and then he'd put in food prices, like milk was selling for this much, or bread, or a house cost. So he kind of was good at that. he was kind of unique in that sense, and I'm not sure where he got this information from, whether he kept files or what, but sadly Henry died, I think it was 1989, just around the time that the Record was sold to Southam newspapers. In fact, it was almost around the same time. And I felt like it was kind of the end of an era in two respects. One, the Record no longer being a family-owned paper, and the other, Henry dying. He was kind of the end of an era of that style of newspaper columnist. Anyway, those are some thoughts on Henry. Okay, who else wants to get up here? I've been told to hurry up. Casey Philippi can always be counted on.
I've got some really juicy stories about Al Anderson, Paul South, Bob South, Dave Hobler. Let me look around here. There's some more. Tim Harrington. And you guys should all be scared because I got stories. But Jim Nolan, the last time was up here, threatened me with payback. So I'm not going to say anything tonight.
Al, do you want to come up, share us a few thoughts?
We'll have to raise the microphone for me. Okay, I'll try and set this up as quickly as I can because I don't want to stay here a long time and bore you guys. I want to take you guys back to the early days of the Record first converting to a Saturday morning paper. And when we did that, what we did, we kept the Monday to Friday papers afternoons, and then the Saturday paper was produced overnight, Friday night, for delivery and production Saturday morning. So what that meant for people in the shop and the newsroom particularly, I know the newsroom best, I think, it meant that very often on a Friday we'd have to come and work a 7 a.m. till 2:30 or 3 o'clock shift, and then come back at 7 or 8 o'clock at night to do the overnight shift to produce the Saturday paper. So I think I've set that up. Somebody mentioned a former boss, Susan McKenzie. She was the news editor at the time, and this predates computers when we were putting things together with typewriters and blah, blah, blah. And we did our Friday morning shift, day shift, and Susan decided she was going to throw a party in the afternoon at her place, her and Bob. Susan was a magnificent cook. So we all went over there and drank up a storm. Most of the people, say 80% of them, were done for the day. But there were 3 or 4 of us, Lou Fournier, Bill Duff, one other, and maybe me. We were on the news desk to put out the Saturday paper. And so we're at Susan's place. We're eating up a storm, we're drinking up a storm, we're half in the bag. I wound up saying to Susan at one point around 5 o'clock at night, I said, "My God, Susan, this is the best beef stew I've ever eaten in my life." She says, "You idiot, Coates. It's beef bourguignon." So, anyway, that got it going. Finally, Susan put the 4 of us in a cab, sent us over to the Record to produce the next day's newspaper. There wasn't a sober one among us. We went in, we worked our tails off as best we can remember it, and somehow or other we got the job done. But we always had to hang around for 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning for the press to run and get the things up, and for Sandy Baird, the publisher, to come in. Sandy was coming in every Saturday morning, dressed either in his cowboy outfit or his sailor outfit or whatever, it doesn't really matter, but he would be in there religiously and like clockwork every Saturday morning to pass judgment on our efforts from the night before. The 4 of us are on the news desk going, oh God, we can barely remember what we did. Paper comes up, Sandy comes in, we're all waiting for the judgment, we're all waiting to get hell. Sandy comes in, picks up the paper like this, and so he's weighing it, doesn't even open it, and said, great paper today, guys. It was heavy. He liked that. Anyway, that's my little story.
I just want to do a tag team thing here. Chuck was talking about Hank, and we sat, Ron and Mike Strathy and Jim Ramon, and we sat around Hank for many years. And Hank was a real character, and in so many ways. But at the very end, when Hank was battling cancer, there was a period where he would go into the newsroom 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and he would report, he'd call me the following Monday. And the story behind this is that Hank knew that my father had a long battle with cancer, and we became friends because of that. At one point, I had to go over to Hank's place in Barra Castle, knocked on the door, and the door comes about 1 inch open. And he says, "You're not coming in. No one from the Record has ever been in my apartment." And I said, "Hank, I'm Tom. I'm just around the corner. I live on Homewood. I can, it's not far for me to come. I'm here to help you figure out, just how you're going to deal with things. If you need help, I'm here." Anyway, kept talking to him for I don't know how long. It seemed like an eternity. And finally the door opens. And in that place, I saw another entire side of Hank that I didn't realize even existed. He was ashamed of it in one way, but I don't know why, because to me it was like an archive in there. It was literally stacks of newspapers, stacks of the Record, and you really had to think about where you were going once you got in the door. Anyway, Hank and I started to really develop a relationship towards the end, and when he would call me on that Monday morning, he would tell me what he saw, that someone had been sitting in his desk. And if anyone remember the Fairway Road location, Hank had one of the prime real estate spots in the newsroom, 2 windows overlooking Fairway Road. And so my task was to explain to whoever came near the thing, near his desk, that they better watch out. So anyway, I ended up going in talking to Carolyn Rettinger and explaining this to her. Anyway, it was just a whole different side of Hank. Another story about Hank, when I first got to the Record, it was newspaper number 5 for me, and we were already already into the new age of computers, and would be starting to write just writing whenever it came to us, creating a story. Well, Hank would sit at his manual typewriter and type out that story, and then would shift over and retype the column into a computer. And it was the funniest thing to see, because he just did not make that transition, but he was also just part of a whole different era of journalism. But and also when Al was talking about Sandy, my desk in that newsroom was right by the door when Sandy would come in, and he'd be every morning, not just Saturday mornings, he'd be kind of, boom, that door would open, and he would come out to tell people, okay, no, this isn't right, this has got to be changed, and he'd be sometimes quite loud about it. Well, one day, I'm sitting there thinking, okay, door's going to open at some point, bang, and he stops. And I realized in that moment, it's something I've done. And he said, your spelling of worldwide, it has a hyphen in it. Now, me being newspaper number 5, and I'd been hired by Canadian Press in Toronto, I look at Sandy, I said, "Oh, really, does it?" Well, I knew that their style book that Sandy had prepared did have a hyphen in there. So I said, "No, let me check that out." So I pull out the CP style guide. Nope, CP was using one word. I said, "Well, but let's not just leave it. Let's check the Oxford Dictionary." So I pull out my well-worn Oxford English Dictionary, and worldwide is one word. Sandy spins around, wham, the door out through the other side of the door. Anyway.
Thanks so much. Thank you, Tom. Hi, folks. I'm not going to be too long, but just want to say hi and great to be back together again. And yes, for sure, thanks to all the organizers. And some of you know me, some of you don't know me. If you're looking at some of the photos, and there's a helicopter kind of in the field right beside the record, and there's a little guy running, halfway between the helicopter and the building. That's me. Yeah, this is probably 87, 88, something like that. And so I hop in the helicopter and we're heading off, but it's raining in the helicopter. The pilot says to me, I don't know if we're going to make it or not. Oh, really? Okay. And I said, yeah, so I says, talk to, oh no, sorry, I'm sorry, I'm going to back up a little bit. It was, we're on the ground still, and we're trying to decide, do we go or not? Because the weather's coming in and it's going to be raining. And so I call on the radio, I call Brian Clark, the boss, and he says, well, what are the odds? And I said, 50-50. He says, okay, go for it. so we get halfway, we get to about Milton, and he says, no, it's too heavy. We're going to have to come back, and so we didn't. There's nothing. I got a helicopter ride out of it, and that was it. So that was a little adventure. I went up with the snowbirds a couple of times, and that was a real adventure. And I've moved from the record in about 2014, after about 28 years, and I've been to a couple of different places, and it's like the record was an adventurous place, but it is a place that. The people the family was like nowhere else that I've been. And so that's why it's great to see everybody here.
So next year's dinner apparently will be Thursday, October 26th, right here at Golf's. But thanks again for everybody for attending. And that's it for the night. We'll see you next year, hopefully. And spread the word to your colleagues who might want to attend next year, and we'll try to keep this thing going. Thank you very much. Okay, good night.